A little kid coming of age in Indiana in the Depression decides he wants to be a writer, a famous writer, and that's what ends up happening. What the hell are the odds on that? Well, my father's incredibly important to me, and not everybody can get to go hire a hall in St. Louis to talk about his father. Writing was a spiritual exercise for my father, and it was really the only thing he really believed in. He wanted to get things right, but never thought that his writing was really going to have much effect on the course of things. His models were Jonah, Lincoln, Melville, and Twain. He wrote and rewrote and rewrote and rewrote, muttering whatever he had just written over and over, tilting his head back and forth, gesturing with his hands, changing the pitch and rhythm of the words, and he would pause, thoughtfully rip the barely written-on sheet of paper from the typewriter, crumple it up, and throw it away and start all over again. Seemed like an odd way for a grown-up to spend time. He had an extra gear language-wise. At 80 plus, he was doing the New York Times crossword puzzles quickly, in ink, and never asking for help. As soon as I told him that the verb came last when I was taking Latin in high school, he could translate my Latin homework at sight without ever having taken Latin. When I complained about being paid $50 for an article that had taken me over a week to write, he said that I should take into account what it would have cost me to take out a 2-page ad announcing that I could write. He had a hard time letting himself be happy, but he truly could not quite hide the glee he got from writing well. The unhappiest times in his life were the months and sometimes a whole year when he couldn't write, when he said he was blocked. He would try just about anything to get unblocked, but he was very, very nervous and suspicious about psychiatry. Remember, he was blocked at one point. I was in my 20s, and he let it slip that he was afraid that therapy might make him normal and well-adjusted, and that would be the end of his writing. I was able to reassure him that they were not nearly that good. When I was 16, he couldn't get a job teaching English at Cape Cod Community College. My mother went to local bookstores and ordered books under false names so the books would at least be in the stores and maybe someone would buy them. 5 years later, he published Slaughterhouse-Five and had $1 million multi-book contract. It took some getting used to. For most people, Kurt's being successful, even famous, is an of course kind of thing. For me, it looks like something that very easily might not have happened. He was a writer who believed in the magic of the process, both what it did for him and what it could do for readers. The reader's time and attention was sacred. He connected with people on a visceral level because he realized that the content was not the whole story. He was and is subversive, but not the way people thought he was. He was in many ways the least wild and crazy guy I ever knew. No drugs, except for one joint with Jerry Garcia. No fast cars. He just said he didn't see the point. I mean, he was scared of anything that would, mess with his mind. He tried always to be on the side of angels. He didn't think the war in Iraq was going to happen right up until it did. Broke his heart, not because he gave a damn about Iraq, but because he loved America and believed that the land and the people of Lincoln and Twain would find a way to be right. He believed, like his immigrant forefathers, that America could be a beacon and a paradise. We talked a lot about whether, all the protests against the war in Vietnam had done any good. He said, we might as well have been throwing cream pies. Reading and writing are in themselves subversive acts. What they subvert is the notion that things have to be the way that they are, that you are alone, that no one has ever felt the way that you have. What occurs to people when they read Kurt is that things are much more up for grabs than they thought they were. The world is a slightly different place, and all because you read a book. It's common knowledge that Kurt was depressed, but like a lot of things that are common knowledge, there's reason at least to doubt it or to think more than a little bit about it. He didn't want to be happy, and he said a lot of depressing things, but I don't think he was ever really depressed. He was like an extrovert who wanted to be an introvert, a very social guy who wanted to be a loner, a lucky person who would have preferred to be unlucky, an optimist posing as a pessimist, hoping that people will take heed. When I look back at the body of work he put out and how hard he worked as a young man, It's just not the work of a depressed person. I mentioned in an article that Kurt, wanting to be a famous pessimist, might envy Twain and Lincoln, their dead children. he went ballistic. It's an odd thing that once you start trusting your imagination and it has some success, you trust it more and more. And I swear, that funny phrase, thinking outside the box. So my father couldn't have found the box with a map. He said over and over when he was teaching at Harvard or Smith or Iowa Writers Workshop, that writing is something that God either permits or declines to permit you to do. He thought that if you made art, it would help you grow, even if the art was not good. But he believed in making, and he said making poems, making novels, making stories, as a way to grow as a human. And he would say that you have to grow as a human, because if you're not growing, you're going. He could have easily been a sad story of a veteran or somebody whose life didn't work out or whatever, and he somehow, some way, had the energy to make it into art and to save his own life and to give us all a lot of joy.